This is the One Girl Revolution podcast, a podcast that highlights the stories of world-changing women and girls across the country. We hope that these stories inspire you, but even more so, we hope that these stories help you to see your own value, your purpose, and your power to change the world through your life. Every woman and girl is a One Girl Revolution. On this week's episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, we welcome Jen Clarkson, co-founder and executive director of Dog Aide. Dog Aide's mission is to provide assistance to Detroit dog owners who are experiencing financial hardship and struggling to provide for their pets. Their community outreach program was created to provide dog food, daily care items, education on proper pet care, and assistance in so many other ways. Their mission is to help keep pets with their people. Jen shares her own life story and how she sort of stumbled into starting Dog Aide. It started with one story, one dog, and now it's become this incredible organization that is helping animals, families, and individuals care for their pets. We hear about dog rescue more and more, and it's so important. And I'm so grateful that we've had so many incredible women on this podcast who are rescuing animals. But what I love about this is it's helping keep animals with their families and help animals get the care that they need. I love this mission and I love this episode, and you will too. Here's my conversation with Jen. Jen, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I am so excited to have you on the show to share your story and to talk about your incredible work with Dog Aide. It's so simple yet innovative, the work that you're doing to really reach and help the needs of people in Metro Detroit, but also the dog community here. So I want to talk about that. But before we get into all the great work that you do with Dog Aide, I would love to rewind and hear a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and I guess your story before Dog Aide.
So I was actually born in California. My father was in the Coast Guard. My mom was a nurse. So I came from a pretty humble blue collar background. And then we ended up moving to Michigan because my dad is a tinsmith as well. And if you live here in Michigan, he was the tinsmith at Greenfield Village. So we moved to Michigan for him to pursue that job. I think that who my parents are and just coming from the background that I came from, it kind of really showed me like work ethic in terms of like seeing my mom, being a nurse and doing like, a really hard job. And then seeing my dad who was kind of like following his passion. And I think that really kind of shows both sides of who I am as a person. And then my parents got divorced when I was pretty young. And so the next thing I would say was something that really influenced who I was having a single mother and, watching how hard she worked and watching how hard it was to like raise a child by herself and on a daily basis. So I think that really helped shape my view of the world too.
So how did you get into working with dogs? Did you always have a heart for animals and like from a young age, or was it something that you kind of came across as you got older?
My father, especially, I think, always kind of collected animals. And I think I kind of, grew up with that same idea of like, if you find one on the side of the road or whatever, and you bring them home. So there was always kind of a menagerie of cats and dogs and, all kinds of things living in our house. And I definitely carried that through as even an adult. I can recall my poor mom having to have, multiple cats in her house while I was away at college because she was, they couldn't live in my dorm. So they had to have somewhere to go. But as much as I had a passion for animals, I grew up in healthcare. Like I said, my mom being a nurse, I ended up becoming a nursing home administrator myself. So I was on a completely different trajectory, and getting involved in animal welfare was not something I ever intended, but it 100% consumes every minute of every day of my life since 2011. So
I love hearing those types of stories, Jen, because life to me is full of so many chapters, and we're taught from a young age, like when you turn 18, you have to have everything figured out, right? Like what you're going to study when you go to college, what your career is going to look like. And the reality is, and I think it's all of us, maybe it's the time that we live in now, our life is full of many chapters. And so I love those kind of surprise moments in life where it's like, oh, yeah, I did this other thing. And then I saw this need. And we have a lot of stories like that on One Girl Revolution where someone sees a need and they're like, hey, I can do something about this, or I want to do something about this. Their life takes a different path forward.
I mean, it's so exciting to live in the time that we're living in now and to see that people really have those options and are really following in so many different paths that we never knew existed for us when we were growing up.
With different nonprofits, there's so much that we can do, so many possibilities, so many opportunities. And it's really sometimes just putting one foot in front of the other and saying, I see this demographic of people or animals, and this is something that I can do to help. And so I want to ask you just about Dog Aid and how it started. You said since 2011, and I saw all the incredible stuff on your website about the great work that you've done, all the accomplishments, all the accolades. But let's rewind to that. Was there a spark moment or a moment when you were like, hey, I need to do something?
Yeah, there was. There was actually in November of 2011, there was a dog that was picked up in the city of Detroit by animal control. It was a stray dog in very bad condition. And it kind of sparked, I hadn't been involved in animal welfare at that point in time, but I had always been interested in, like I helped a dog get in, picked a dog up and I got it into rescue. And so I kind of watched everybody's pages on social media. And this dog kind of like caught everyone's attention all at the same time. It was just this odd phenomenon to watch. And that dog being picked up led me to a group of very like-minded people who wanted to fight for that one dog to try to help him. Unfortunately, we were not successful, but it just really sparked something for all of us that there was a whole population. And at that moment, it was just about the dogs. And I'll get to that later on. But, it sparked for us that there was this whole population of dogs in the city of Detroit that were just completely being neglected. And I'm not saying by people, by the system. Like it was a broken system that wasn't taking care of. There was tens of thousands of dogs on the street that just weren't getting their needs met. And I think I've always kind of been like a kind of a social justice kind of a girl. And I love that that's phrase is so much more now part of our society too, because I think it's so important that people, like you said earlier, you see something and you do something. Like it was that spark that I was like, I have to jump in and make a difference right now. And it just kind of rolled from there.
It snowballed. And I think sometimes that's life, right? You put one foot in front of the other, and then other people jump on board and other people want to support and get involved. And the reality is we can all do something. We talk about that a lot on this podcast. And I really encourage everybody who listens, like, to find ways. We each have time, talent, and treasure at different points in our lives. We might not have money to donate to something like Dog Aid, but maybe we can give of our time or our talent. We can all do something to make a difference.
Absolutely.
So with Dog Aid, there's a spark moment. And then where did it go from there? How did it become, now it's this incredible nonprofit organization. I know that it snowballed and there are probably so many different chapters to that story about how it's come to where it is today. But can you share a little bit about the journey of here's the spark moment and then where it went from there?
Yeah. So when we realized that we weren't going to be able to save the one dog that kind of got us, that started the momentum, we kind of wanted to continue the idea of rescue and, helping other dogs that we would see on the streets. And what that did is it brought us into the neighborhoods. And then we got to look in people's yards and we were like, wait a minute, like these could be where these dogs come from, and connected to it, we're seeing the conditions that people are living in too. I mean, it's just like it was this eye-opening moment of, not only are we dealing with like a dog in a particular situation, we're dealing with a community that they're being impacted by all of these same things, like economics and politics and, being marginalized. And it was like, oh my God, like we have to help here. there's always going to be people who rescue, and I'm not by any means discounting them. They do an incredible job at what they do, but it just wasn't what we as a group felt like was going to be where our impact needed to be. And so we started knocking on people's doors. We literally were walking through neighborhoods and introducing ourselves to people and knocking on doors and saying, how can we help? Like, we're here. Let us know, what the resources are that are going to make your lives that like just a little bit easier.
Yeah, and those are such important conversations. And even I had Christina Rinaldi from Detroit Dog Rescue on a few months ago, and she shared something that kind of opened my eyes. And I think it's along those same lines is we'll sometimes see somebody in our neighborhood or hear a dog barking and make a judgment call about what we think is going on. Like, oh my gosh, I wish that person would bring their dog in. And there
Yep.
are so many instances where it's like, well, the house, we live in Michigan, so the house is colder than it is outside. And at least outside, the dog has a dog house. There are so many different facets to the struggles that people go through. And right now, more than ever, I feel like people are just really struggling to even put food on their own table, let alone take care of their dogs. And so that's what I love so much about Dog Aid and what you're doing there is you're able to really just go meet the people where they're at and say, how can we keep your dog from ending up on the streets? Or how can we keep your dog from ending up in one of these rescues or animal control taking ownership of this dog? How can we keep this dog, support you so that you can keep your dog where it is? Can you share about the overarching mission of Dog Aid?
I think that it does morph to a certain extent because we're always looking for what the community needs and how we can provide those services. But the overall mission is just to, number one, create a healthy, happy dog population that stays with its family and to support that family as much as possible. We've talked a lot within our organization about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how, if you have a home environment where somebody's struggling to even keep food on the table for their children, like they love their dog and they're still considering that dog part of their family, but the dog might also get the same food that they get. And for them, that's like, hey, I'm doing everything that I can and I'm actually feeding them from my table. So we're just always going to, like, our mission is always going to be, how can we support and help take some of the burden off of you to be able to manage all of the other things that you have going on in your life as well and keep your family together.
If you want to be a part of the revolution and support the work we're doing to uplift women's voices and their stories, please consider donating to our 501c3 nonprofit organization. Every single dollar goes right back into the work that we're doing and will allow us to tell even more stories of inspiring women and girls to inspire and empower the next generation. Donate today at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com. Well, and like veterinary bills, I know there are so many different services that you provide, but even as a dog owner myself, it's like you don't realize until you actually have a dog. And then you're like, oh my gosh, these are all the different expenses. And then if a dog has some sort of illness or something that needs to be treated, that can add up. And dog food is expensive, daily care items, all the different facets of things that you're able to provide and really just meeting people where they're at.
Right. And, one of the basic things, something that we've grown in the last couple of years is vaccine clinics, because just getting preventive care for your dog on a yearly basis is a good $250. And we're not even talking about heartworm prevention and other things that also add up on top of that. And it's super important. Not only does it affect your dog, but people can catch those diseases from dogs. Other dogs can catch those diseases from dogs. So, it's a community-wide effort, as well as educating people. I have so many times come across people who say, say their dog has heartworm and they tell me, but I've gotten my dog vaccinated. They've actually, put in the time and effort to try to make their dog healthy. And they say, but I got my dog vaccinated. And it's not ever been told to them that that's not part of a normal vaccination. It's a completely different process. And so, they're still trying to make the effort. And they are being failed. I don't want to say that they are failing. They are being failed. So, a lot of these programs that we put in place are those stopgaps to try to help them understand all of the needs that need to be met.
Yeah, it's education, it's resources, it's helping people to know what types of resources are out there too. And I just love so much of the mission. And I was going through your website before I hopped on here, and I encourage everybody to go to your website, follow everything that you're doing on social media, support it in any way that they can. But you're doing visits to homes, pounds of food delivered. I mean, you've done so much there. You've responded to so many calls for help. I mean, this is in the thousands and thousands and thousands. People can go on your website and look. Vaccines, like you mentioned, microchips, dogs spayed and neutered, outdoor kennels built, which is such a need, a necessity,
Yeah.
especially being here in Michigan, that there are so many instances where that means. And like same with heartworm pills administered. You have done so much for these animals and for their families, and just being a support system, someone that they can call and say, hey, this is what we're struggling with. This is what our need is. And so, Jen, how do people get connected to you? I'm sure it's a whole different slew of things. Sometimes people just cold call you or it's referrals, but how do people usually get connected with you?
Most of the time, it's neighbors passing the information on to neighbors, or people seeing us on the streets and asking if they can get services too. And we have hundreds of clients, we probably have close to 500 clients between outdoor dogs and indoor dogs. And we have a hotline. So anybody can call us at any point in time and request services. And the only thing that we require of the dogs in our program is that they are spayed and neutered. But we actually have a free spay and neuter program, and that is for any dogs in our program and any dogs in the city of Detroit. Any owned dog in the city of Detroit, we will spay and neuter, vaccinate, microchip for free. So whether you want to be a client of ours or you just want that service, we're there to provide any of that. It's been really interesting from the beginning to now just to see how people have come in contact with us, because it used to be us going to people and knocking on doors, like I said, and now we have a hotline, Google voicemail number, and we have volunteers that staff that every single day because we get so many requests for service, and people are just passing that information out there, and we love it. We love to know that we're making the impact that we need to make.
Even just to have someone to call too, because sometimes people are like, "Hey, like I mean, we've all done it where you Google some medical thing that you think is going on." But with animals, it's so important just to have somebody to call and say, "Hey, this is what I'm experiencing," or "This is what my neighbor is experiencing. What can I do to help and support them?" And you really have created this incredible network of support to make sure that these animals are getting the treatment that they need and the families are getting the support that they need. It's really incredible and so needed. I think about animal rescues and all these other things, but it's like, no, you're doing the work to really keep these animals safe and in healthy home environments with their families.
Yeah, it's really wonderful for me to see that, like, back when we started, it was kind of a novel approach, and it's becoming more and more like integrated into all of the other systems. It's really much more understood now as a piece of the puzzle. And one of the greatest gifts that I get is calls from people all across the country who say, "We saw you on social media and we want to do the same thing. Like, how do we start this up?" So I love being able to consult and talk with people and just try to get the services out there, as far and wide as we possibly can.
We can all do that work, right? We can all, and I
Yeah.
love when we don't have to recreate the wheel. Not every single person has to start a nonprofit organization or do something in a big way. Sometimes it's the little things that we do in our own communities, on our own block, where we're like checking in with people, making sure they have, what they need. If we have things that we can donate from
Yep.
our own animals, doing that, like making sure that we support one another is so important.
Yep. Absolutely.
So we can all do that. Jen, I am curious. I know there are so many stories that you could point to over the years of people and animals and families that have been helped through your work. But if you were to pick one or two stories of people or animals or both, probably both, you feel like really embody the importance of the work that you do, could you share a story or two?
Yeah. One of the stories that I have, there's a dog. Her name is China, and she's been with us. We call her an OG. She's been with us since almost the beginning, and she hates our guts. We can't get near her, but we all love her dearly, and she loves her owner to death. She's always been an outdoor dog for the most part. So, anyway, the owner recently moved to a new house, and we were so excited to see that when he moved, he built her a kennel and a shelter like on his own in his yard. Like all of the things that we had shown him at his previous house, he made sure to do those so that she was comfortable and in a good place in her new environment. And that just made me so happy to see, that he had done that. And then the other thing, I don't know that it's necessarily one story, but like I really love, like you were talking about, when we start off with somebody and it's kind of like, I don't want to call it hand holding, but we're kind of working through a process with them about, just how that care works out. And that eventually they're calling us and they're asking those questions. They're being the ones that are proactive instead of us being reactive to scenarios, or calling us on the phone and saying, I don't need you to stop by anymore. Like, I've got this taken care of and I appreciate your help. We have a bulletin board up at our warehouse and we get thank you cards all the time. And we put all of those up so that all the volunteers realize like how important they are to people's lives and that people understand like what we're doing for them. So, it's so hard for me to say. I mean, we have so many dogs that have been outdoor dogs that are now indoor dogs. Georgie and Mama, Little Bit is one of them. That would be a good story. So Little Bit was a dog that was an outdoor dog when we met her. She transitioned into an indoor dog and she was recently lost. She got out. And the first call that her owner made was to call us on the phone and be like, she's out. He was terrified. Like, she's out. I don't know what to do. This is an elderly man who rarely leaves his house. And, we mobilized and she was found and she got back home and she was safe and sound and she was microchipped. So when she was found, they were able to scan her and give us a call because we always secondary microchip name to us because we want to make sure we can help out. But I was just so proud of the fact that, this person who had originally been like apprehensive about, he doesn't know why we're there at his door, like, talking to him about his dog in his yard. So now he's like, but not only is the dog in the house, but he's calling us when the dog's lost and saying, she's gone and I need you guys to help me get her back home. Like, she means that much to me that I need to make sure she's safe and with me again.
Yeah, it's so important, like, just that you're building this support system around people, but also opening people's eyes, my eyes, and so many others to the actual needs and struggles of individual people with animals and how we can all do something to support them. Jen, I guess with regards to that, what impact do you hope that Dog Aid can make? I know that obviously you want the really tangible things, we want to support and help and aid as many families and animals as possible. But I feel like there's also a cultural component to opening people's eyes to what's actually going on and getting people to support one another. What impact do you hope that your work can have on the world?
Yeah, I think that you hit the nail on the head. I think that that's, like I said, that was part of the morph that we saw as, we continued to do this, is realizing that, it wasn't just a dog we were helping, it was an entire household. And that household is also connected to a community. And, it eats me up when I see people saying things like, oh, well, that dog just needs to be taken away from that person. Like, I don't understand. I don't want to live in a community where people don't look out for other people. Like, that is what I hope to bring to everybody. I hope that that's what Dog Aid brings to everybody. I mean, one of the things that I'm super proud of about our group is that you can talk to pretty much anybody in animal welfare in Michigan and a lot of people nationally, and they will say that we're well respected for exactly that. We hold ourselves to a certain value and we make sure that anybody that we work with has those same values. Like we want people to be able to understand that there's so much more that impacts the little piece of what they're seeing. And, that's the only way we grow as a society is by being able to look out for every single person that lives in our communities.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number one girl, REVO. We're on TikTok at One Girl Revolution. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel at One Girl Revolution. That's the number one Girl Revolution. You can find all of our social media links, previous podcast episodes, our Emmy-nominated documentary series, and more on our website at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number one girlrevolution.com. Well, you're doing it one day at a time. And I know you've grown and evolved so much through the years that you've been around. And I know there's so much more to come. But Jen, I'm so curious to know what's next for you, for Dog Aide. And this podcast is all about dreaming. So in your dream of dream worlds, like what do you have coming up? But also 5 or 10 years down the line, what do you hope that Dog Aide in your work looks like?
I think that I'd like to bring more services to the city. I see a lot of, I don't know if I'm sure you've heard about food deserts. Well, I see shortages in veterinary services and, things and services that people can afford. And I'm not by any means bashing the veterinarians. They have to make the money to keep their clinics going. But I'd like to see more clinics in the city. And I'd like to be able to provide more services that potentially can go to people's homes or at least locally within their neighborhoods so they're accessible. And the vaccine clinics part and parcel of that. But, spay neuter clinics, heartworm safety clinics, preventive healthcare clinics, like all of those sorts of things are things that are on our radar as a group.
Well, and I know that you work here in Metro Detroit, but like you shared before, these are issues that are worldwide, right? We're experiencing these things in so many cities around the world and even in smaller communities and in neighborhoods. Like everybody's struggles kind of look a little different, but we're all the same at the same time. There are a lot of struggles that people all around the world are facing, and we can all do something.
Yeah.
Jen, I want to ask you a question just about your own journey and the work that you do. I know that there are some great days where you have amazing successes and you can't wait to shout from the rooftops, all the great things that are happening. I also know that there are really difficult situations that you see, that you experience, maybe animals that you can't help or families that you can't help. If you could get to the very root of why you do what you do, what makes you get up, especially on those dark and difficult days or after one of those dark and difficult days, if you could get to the very root of why you care so deeply about this work and why you're so passionate about it, what would you say that root is?
I think the root is that, for the 10 times that you're kicked down, there's one time that you can see the difference that you make. And that right there, that'll get me up every single day, knowing that I was able to assist in one situation. And I will grow and learn from all of the other situations that didn't necessarily go the way that I wanted to. I can't ever let myself be downtrodden by the things that I've seen because I'm so uplifted by the things that I am able to accomplish or help make happen.
No, that makes so much sense. And I know that there's so much good and so much light coming from the work that you're doing. And I'm sure that that just fuels you every single day. And there's such a great need that we all can do something, we all can get involved. And so, how can people get involved in Dog Aide? What can we do to support your great work?
Well, always money. I mean, that.
Say it. Yeah. People can donate.
Uh,
I'll be sure to put all the links to your website, your social media, so people can donate.
But like you were saying earlier, too, we always take donations of you've got some gently used things around your house or a bag of food your dog didn't like. We'll always take those things, too. So I like the fact that we take those because it makes people feel better about like, oh, I have this. And otherwise I'd throw it away. Like, we'll take it and we'll make sure that it gets to somebody who's going to be able to utilize it. We can always take volunteers. We have so many different aspects of what we do and how people can fit in, whether it be, like I said, being a part of our hotline team, which is exceptionally important because they're the first line of people who talk to clients that call in. To you can do just vaccine clinics, you can do outreach. There's just so many things. So we're always looking for new volunteers. And it's funny, but I think that like part of the way that you can support us is just to kind of pull off your blinders a little bit and understand how the world is and how we all fit in. And like I said, like it's super important to me that people see their community around them. And that's how you can support us, is by dropping the judgment a little bit and just being there in support and saying, yeah, I get it. I see it. And, go forth and like do your best.
Yeah, we can all do something. And I always say on this podcast, I feel like a broken record, but we can always follow on social media. So maybe you just have a social media
Right.
account and share the work that you're doing. When
Absolutely.
you go to Costco, buy an extra bag of dog food that you're already buying for your own dog. Or I love during the pandemic, during the lockdowns, everybody was just like adding stuff to their Amazon carts. They could also, reach out to you guys and say, hey, I have a little extra money. What can I buy to send your way, and have things shipped directly to you? We can all do something. And like we kind of talked about before, open your eyes to your own neighbors and your own community, because we can all do the work that you're doing at Dog Aid. And so I'd love to hear from you. What can people do to emulate your work in their own communities?
Just pay attention. And we did do it during COVID. So I hope that people can get back to that space in their lives of realizing that, your neighbors might need you, or the senior citizens up the street, or the children who aren't getting lunches. I mean, there's so many ways that we can just kind of be aware of what's going on around us. There's people who want to be too involved in other people's lives in like a bad way. But I do encourage people to like, just kind of keep an eye out for your neighbor and look around your community and see where you fit in, whether it's volunteering at the senior center or maybe at a school nearby, or come down and volunteer with us, but just kind of watch out for your neighbors.
You mentioned a really important demographic there, the senior community. And I know so many of them have, little animals. There's a girl that we've had on the podcast, Ruby Kate Chitsey from Arkansas, and she founded an organization that's incredible called Three Wishes for Ruby's Residents. And they grant wishes to the elderly living in senior living facilities around Arkansas, but now they've grown and they do work around the world. But she encourages people to call their local senior living facility. And that's a way, just from an animal perspective, call and see if anybody has a cat or a dog, or, see if there are things that those people need. Because a lot of them, they can't afford what their dog or cat or whatever their animal is, what they need. And so we can all do something. And I just think you're such a beacon of light to all of us, Jen, and the work that you're doing with Dog Aid. And I can't wait to continue to follow everything that you're doing and find ways to collaborate and support you. And I know everybody who's listening is going to want to support the work that you're doing. So as I mentioned before, I will put the link to your website, all your social media links, so people can easily get in touch with you, follow, get involved, donate, all the things. But before I let you go, Jen, I always end this podcast on 2 questions. So I'll start with the first one. You are a one girl revolution, and that's why I wanted to have you on this podcast. But who is a one girl revolution in your life? Who is a woman or girl that inspires you?
I'm not going to say one person, and I hope that's not.
That's allowed. You can say as many. Okay. It's a hard question.
I have 2 sons, and they are 18 and 20. And so it allows me the opportunity to see women of that age. And I think that they're my inspiration, is seeing this next generation who are really just vocal and engaged. And, I see girls that are graduating that are already like, connected to all kinds of like social justice issues, and just they're not going to take no for an answer, and they're not going to be quiet when they see something that they think is wrong, and they inspire me to continue on. I'm like, as much as like we're leading the way, or we're the path, like those people are going to be the next president of the United States. They're going to be the first women president, and like that to me is like, go girl, like that's amazing.
It's so beautiful. I'm so glad you brought that up because it's so beautiful to see this next generation up and coming and they're seeing their power and their value and their purpose more than I think we were raised in that community and with that mindset, a lot of us, but it's really beautiful to see this next generation saying, I have a voice, I matter, I can make a change, I can be the difference that I want to see in the world. And so it's really beautiful to watch.
Yeah. And I think that they've actually been able to see it play out somewhat already, which gives them a whole lot more power. And that's really cool to see.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to see what our future holds because of that generation of women and girls that are up and coming. But before I let you go, Jen, I always end this podcast on one question. So I'd like to ask you if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
If you see something, do something. It's as simple as that.
Well, you are an example of that. You have done that, Jen, and I can't wait to stay in touch with you and continue to follow the great work that you're doing. Thank you so much for being on the One Girl Revolution podcast. And thank you for all the incredible work that you do.
Thank you for having me. I loved being here and I would be happy to chat any other time.
Amazing. Thank you, Jen. For more from One Girl Revolution, to listen to all of our podcast episodes, watch our Emmy-nominated documentary series, follow us on social media, donate to our nonprofit organization, and more, please visit onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com.